If I could just ask for another show of hands, is there anyone listening that has never seen Revit Architecture before? So if you could press your hand up button just so that I can get a feeling. So there's a couple of hands going up. Okay, so most people have seen it. So we'll cover off the basics as well as looking at maybe some of the new features that we've actually got within the 2016 offering as well. Okay, right. So my name's Simon Dickinson. I'm the BIM Technical Manager here at Greytech. I've been using Revit pretty much since Autodesk purchased the product. I do need to update my slide. I've actually been using it for longer than 12 years now. So pretty much Autodesk purchased the product back in around about 2001. The first release of Revit was back in 1998. So it's not a new product at all, and so it's developed quite a lot from the early days as well into the very powerful product that it actually is today. If anyone's interested in the other flavours, there is another webinar this afternoon on Revit structures as well. Okay, so Revit Architecture. Revit Architecture is a product that helps us to facilitate BIM, building information modelling. And as much as most people out there have heard of BIM, there's always not everyone really understands what this buzzword is. There's a lot of people refer to BIM as building information modelling, and there's certain people out there now that are starting to refer to it as building information management, because that actually takes it away from the design sort of area where we're interested in and moves it more into the facilities management area. Okay, so what actually is BIM? Okay, BIM itself is all about the way that we communicate our design. It's how other people can then understand and interpret our designs. Okay, so it's very much a way to collaborate, and because it's three-dimensional, it makes it easier for us to be able to collaborate because we can understand how our designs are actually set to work. Yeah. The other question is, this is new technology, and there's still people out there that are holding back on moving forward into this idea of 3D worlds. So, the other question we always start to ask now is, are we actually taking advantage of the benefits of BIM? Okay. So BIM can be described in several different ways. It's model-based, so what we're doing is we're digitally prototyping our designs in a virtual environment. Just like the manufacturing industry has done for years, we've never really approached that because if you think about our designs, it's very hard to actually construct a building and call it a prototype. I suppose if you're a house builder that's going to be building that design multiple times, you've got plenty of opportunity to refine your design once it's actually up and running and working. Most projects we work on are one-off, so we can't really build it and then see if it works. And this is where, in sort of historically, problems have come in because things don't work on site, and it's where the additional cost comes in. So if we can actually produce our models virtually, we can also look at how they can be constructed virtually, we can look at how they operate virtually. So it gives us the ability to really fully understand how our building is going to work. It's sometimes referred to as a model-centric approach because we start to integrate everything. It's not just about the architects, the structural engineer and the mechanical engineers as well that allow us to pull everything together. So as I mentioned before, it gives us a better understanding and more clarity, if you like, on how our building is going to actually operate. It gives us continuity because we actually know how things are going to happen. Yeah, we can continuously improve our design, but our data is consistent. When I demonstrate the software later on to the people who've never seen it, there's a facility in Revit called bidirectional associativity, and it basically means that a change anywhere within my drawings is a change everywhere. So if I make a change in a floor plan, my elevations are updated. If I delete an item, my schedules are automatically updated. So it keeps everything consistent. Yeah. And because it's so quick, we can actually respond very quickly to project changes, and we can start to be smarter about the way in which we make changes. So we've actually got that ability to make changes quickly. In fact, Revit actually stands for Revise Instantly. It's where it gets its name from. So how is this model based different? Yeah. So we've mentioned it's working in 3D. It allows us to collaborate better. So we're actually making sure our buildings work long before we get to site. So rather than having to firefight when we get onto site, where the first solution we can possibly come up with is the best solution because it's the quickest way to save money, the quickest solution is the solution we use. It's never maybe the preferred, it's not the best one, it's the one we go for. It has to be because of the time constraints on site. So it does help us to deliver things to site quicker. We've got an awful lot of automation within the way that construction drawings are actually created. So if you've already set your construction drawings up, when you make a change to a plan or an elevation, we know that our drawings are also going to be updated as well. So we're making sure that there's a consistent, a definite consistency between our data throughout our entire design process. Why are we doing it? What's forced us down this route? Now, the move to BIM has been happening for years, and various people and the trailblazers, if you like, and the people that got on board originally, they're the ones that are sort of benefiting big style at the moment. But the government saw a major benefit in the way that BIM works, and they've issued the government construction strategy. This was issued back in May 2011, and various points were made there about how we can actually enable the improvement of the way buildings are designed, how they operate, and how we can actually make savings on the way that this is done as well. So by 2016, there is a mandate to say that all public funded projects will actually be done to BIM level 2, and I'll come on to what the different BIM levels are in a second as well. So who was responsible for this? Now, original Paul Morrell was employed as the government construction advisor, and he looked into BIM, and he could definitely see where these savings could be made because everyone would talk to each other. And one of the things I always say about BIM is if it doesn't do anything, the main thing it does do is it opens communication links, and it makes communication clearer. Paul has since stepped down, and that's now been handed over to Peter Hansford, who's a civil engineer. So the whole process is moving forward, and it's still going to happen next year where they actually start to mandate this on government-funded projects. When the government actually looked into it and they could see where the savings could be made, they actually came up with this table. And this table was basically based on the findings, the original findings. The fact that you could start to reduce cost by 10%, the construction time can be reduced. The predictability can be increased, so we can almost predict outcomes because we're prototyping, because we're looking at being able to simulate the construction virtually. That meant that we could reduce the number of defects that we'd have in our buildings because we could find where the issues would potentially be beforehand. Accidents, health and safety, that's a massive drop, 20% drop on accidents. And again, because if we can plan our site better virtually, we can make sure that sites are safer to operate on as well. The other thing as well is, if you look at quite a lot of the way that the industry is going now, we're looking more at prefabrication as well. Prefabrication automatically reduces risk anyway. An increase in productivity and an increase in our turnover and profits as well. So there's more money to make because we can do things quicker. So we can charge the same as what we were doing before, except we can now do that job faster. So there's actually 4 levels of BIM that are talked about quite often. So you might hear people talk about level 0. Well, level 0 is just 2D CAD. There's no real interoperability there. It might even be just using a drawing board even. So, you know, a 2D drawing that's not linked to anything. That's sort of where we're looking at level 0. We then get level 1. Now, there's a certain integration of 3D in BIM level 1, but we sometimes refer to this as lonely BIM. So this is where basically we've got managed data. Yeah, it's in 2D or 3D format. We might be using a particular standard, so it might be to BS 1192 or your own internal standards. But there's no real collaboration outside of your organisation. So the information that you're sending on to the structural engineer and the mechanical engineer would be 2D PDFs. So we're sending them information, but we're not really taking benefit of our 3D models. BIM level 2, what we will do is we will actually be sending 3D information so we can coordinate, we can make sure that our models fit and sit together. The structural engineer can sit his model inside our model, and the M&E can add that in as well. So we're looking at a full virtual building with all the services and everything associated to that as well. Some people might talk about BIM level 3. If you hear anyone saying that they are BIM level 3 compliant, they might be using certain aspects of what BIM level 3 might be, but at the end of the day, we haven't really defined what BIM Level 3 is. There is a government document out at the moment with some findings, but the whole process isn't fully defined, and in many cases the technology to move us forward to BIM Level 3 doesn't exist either. Level 2 will give us beyond 3D, it gives us 4D program data and also 5D costing as well. So costing and being able to look at how we construct an object is quite important. There's various documents out there that you can get hold of that's going to give you a lot of background information about how things are being developed. In the main ones of the PAS 1192 documents, there's 4 of them at the moment, but all of these will actually guide you through. So if we look at sort of like PAS 1192-2, it'll allow us to look at what a BIM execution plan is. It'll talk us through the naming conventions that could be used, how the coordination works, and the level of definition. So the level of definition is sort of how much data we're adding in or detail we're adding into our models as we move forward. And this is a document that really does help to understand the way that that works. BS 1192, we understand it's got the standards in, yeah. And if you look at that again with PAS 1192, it'll give you a guideline on how you actually manage the design data. Okay, so how that data is actually moved around. If we look at this level of development, so LOD, there's various different standards levels within here that allow us to go from a conceptual design all the way through to manufacturing, fabrication, detailing that is absolutely 100% accurate. That's LOD 500. We have had people talk about using something called LOD 450, which is almost exactly as it would be on site, but it allows them to then, when they're on site, to make small tweaks to where the things are installed. Okay, so again, that's in the PAS document in PAS 1192-2. BS 1192, which is obviously the CAD standards, refers to layering naming. Well, it's a bit slightly different in the way that BIM products work, particularly Revit. Revit uses categories, so if you draw a door, the software knows it's a door, so automatically it adds it to a door category. So the layering naming is a little bit different, but they are drafting BS 1192 at the moment to cope with the BIM standards as well. Some people out there might be working on projects where the main contractor has sent them a BIM survey out, a BIM readiness survey. Yeah, so you've got these PQQs being sent out to say, are you capable of achieving this? This document, PAS 91 2013, basically has all the answers in. Yeah, so this is the document that helps you answer that survey. Okay, there is some awkward questions in it. Usually the people that are handing it out have simply just ripped this document off anyway, so they haven't written them themselves, so it's usually the questions are exactly the same. So I highly recommend you look at that, particularly if you're being approached by contractors to work on BIM projects at the moment. The EIRs, so the Employers Information Requirements, again, if you are a council or a trust, or you've got a building and you're actually expecting external contractors to produce information for you, I highly recommend you have a look at writing an EIR. This will allow us to make sure that you can dictate what level of information you want within your BIM models. Remember, BIM stands for Building Information Modeling. So the I is the important bit, and this is where we get the benefits. It's the level of information that we actually add into our model that gives us the intelligence. One of the biggest reasons the government are excited about BIM isn't because it's going to save them money during the construction phase. As much as that's good, it's the benefit to them from a facilities management point of view. So the level of information that's required within a model, in some cases, is just as important for when it goes to facilities management. Who manufactured that door? Who manufactures the door handle? If a door handle breaks, where can we go to get that exact same door handle again? So we need to know who manufactures it. There might even be supplier information on there as well. So there may be requests that are actually put in. Okay. So EIR is a very important part of the BIM process. PAS 1192-3, this will help you to understand all the information required from the asset management point of view. Yeah, so how we actually get the information in, what information is required, etc. And again, it just sets down some standards so you can actually understand how they're set up. Yeah. A word that's getting bandied around, and this will come more and more important, particularly next year, because this is one of the things that the government are mandating within their BIM process, and that's COBie. So you might have heard of COBie. It's written in its long form at the top of the screen there, so Construction Operations Building Information Exchange. This is an as-built spreadsheet, yeah, that will contain all the information about a facility. The facility's name, the number of levels, the ground floor, first floor, its zones, its rooms, the elements that are in that room. So this is a fixed asset register for the building when it's actually being completed. Okay, so you can see that it's broken down into them various areas. Okay, and then the objects and the components that are actually in there afterwards. So if we take into account the Reba plan of work, there's key data drops from COBie as well. It's not just one spreadsheet that we produce at the end of construction. We actually make sure that we actually specify. Now the plan of works has been changed slightly, and this sort of helps to incorporate the BIM process. But if we actually go to the end here, we've actually got our COBie data drop. So this is telling us when we do the drops. COBie drop 4 is going to be the most complete one. These are just drops, and it is just creating an Excel spreadsheet. So in some cases, it's a case of manually filling in an Excel spreadsheet. There are plugins for Revit which will actually help to automate this. Now, when the government were actually looking into the minimum software requirements for BIM compliancy for BIM level 2, they couldn't start specifying you have to use Revit, you have to use this product. It wasn't really seen as being that's right, particularly if you're the person that actually paints the wall. Part of the COBie information is what's the wall finish, yeah, what floor finish have we got, and when was that carpet installed, because then we can actually work out what the life of that carpet is and when do we need to replace the carpet. So do we want the carpet fitter to have to go out and buy a copy of Revit Architecture so you can put that information in? Because COBie is a spreadsheet, the minimum software requirement from the government's point of view is a copy of Microsoft Excel. So certain people, all they need is access to fill that information in. In reality, you probably wouldn't trust a carpet fitter to fill in that spreadsheet because it's a single spreadsheet and then send it back. He'll probably just provide that information to the BIM coordinator, the BIM manager, whoever the lead is, and they will then propagate this spreadsheet. But this will be a spreadsheet that is then handed over to the FM people afterwards. A lot of the FM software is already now geared up to read and understand the COBie spreadsheet data format. Okay. If we have a look in PAS 1192-4, it mentions here how COBie works, what the requirements are, code of practice for this, etc. So how scalable is BIM? One of the arguments I always get is that it's only good for new builds, it's only good for square buildings, it's no good for old buildings, and it's no good for small projects. It does work on small projects. I've got house builders that use Revit all the way through. So as you can see here, Hinkley Point, it's a £16 billion project. They're actually spending £30 million on a temporary jetty, just so we can get everything in and out, and after the project's finished, the temporary jetty will be going. If you look at HS2, that's currently at 43.6 billion, and an awful lot of the work is actually going to be done using Autodesk software. This is probably one of the best collaborative projects examples out there at the moment, because it's not just going to be an Autodesk job, it's going to be used on other competitive products as well. So for instance, Bentley have got a product called Bentley Rail, which is very good for doing rail lines. It calculates canvas, etc. But all the infrastructure, like the stations, the bridges, etc., that's probably going to be done using Autodesk products. In particular, it's going to be using Revit. So all of this information is going to sit in one central repository, and it's all going to sit, it's going to talk to each other, and we've got a full collaborative BIM project in here. There's some other documents out there as well that actually tell you just how much BIM's been taken up now within the industry. So here, the McGrew-Hill Construction Report for 2014. I'd recommend you look at that. These are free documents, they're freely available, that you can actually search for and download from the internet. The NBS do a BIM report every year, and if we look at the chart that's just up there at the moment from 2010 to 2013, the people that are neither aware nor using has changed from 43% back in 2010 to only 5% in 2013. The 2014 one that has been released, I just haven't managed to put the 2015 one, so it's been released, I just haven't been able to get the 2014 figures in there. So various sort of people talking about their uptake. You see various people that are sort of using BIM level 3 to a certain aspect. Some of the concepts are actually there, but we're getting a massive uptake now. The change and the uptake in the industry over the last few years has been phenomenal. And when you look at the software usage, obviously it's an independent survey. Revit Architecture is the main product now that's actually being used. Unfortunately, all plan Nemetschek, no one's using that, or no one that actually took part in the survey is using that anyway. So what is actually new? So what we'll do is we'll talk about some of the new features for those that have never that have used Revit already, and then once we've looked at what some of the new features are this year, we'll go back and I'll give you an overview of exactly how Revit actually works itself. Okay, so some of the new features, particularly from the platform, has all been about performance this year. It's about actually enhancing the speed and how we actually can use Revit. So progressive display, it gives us better support. So when we're actually moving our models around, if your computer's graphics card isn't quite up to the job, it will just degrade the scene while you move around. Once it's finished, it will then redraw. The other advantage here as well is it will actually allow us to navigate whilst it's actually redrawing things. If you've made a big change to the model and it's having to redraw a lot of information, whilst it's doing that, you can still pan, zoom, rotate, and orbit within that view as well. We've got some improvements to the Project North. Now, Revit has got 3 separate coordinate systems. It's got the internal one, which you guys don't need to worry about. It's got a project, and then it's got a shared. The project coordinate system and basically our True North and Project North will allow us to actually have our buildings set up for solar study. Yeah, so we can rotate Project North in plan view. If you ever rotated Project North before, annotation would start to go amiss. We've actually got improvements now to make sure that that doesn't change. So the idea of having a Project North and a True North is we can work perpendicular within Project North, but we can set True North so that we can have our shadows being cast correctly. If we're placed our building where it's going to go, we can start to do solar studies and we can start to understand the impact of our shadows on other buildings and the impact of surrounding existing buildings on our development as well. All our drawing sheets are stored within our project, but sometimes when you've already placed a view on a sheet, it's a bit awkward to find out which drawing sheet you've actually placed it on. We can now select a view, right-click, and it will automatically take us to the drawing sheet that that drawing's already on. It just reduces search time, and particularly if you weren't the person that set that drawing sheet up, you might not know which sheet it's actually being applied to. We've had some revision enhancements this year as well. Revisions have always been quite good, but never quite worked the way that most people want them to work. We've had some issues in the past with the way that numbering works, particularly if you've got a lot of revisions and you've gone past 26 revisions on a drawing. It's always become a little bit awkward on how it actually numbers, so we've actually improved that. We can now start to add prefix and suffix on them numbers as well, and it's a bit easier to control the order. So now when we get basically past Z, we'll go to AA, AB, AC, etc., and we can control that quite easily. Section boxes, I quite like this as a little feature. We've always been able to create these by manually, but now we can do it by an object. So we can actually physically select an object and ask it to put a section box around it. So we get a 3D representation of an object. This is really useful when you're putting drawing sheets together and you're trying to make sure that you get a full understanding of how something's actually working. So it's a much, much better way of just communicating our design intent, if you like. We've had some rendering enhancements, so we've always been able to do sort of renders within in Revit using Mental Ray, but we've now got the Autodesk Ray Tracer built in. It was added in a few years ago as a view style, but now it's a proper standalone renderer within the software as well, and it's real time, and it's quite a nice effect that you actually get out of that. The ability to schedule floors has always been there, but one of the things we've never been able to do is pull in information regarding the floors. So we've got now the ability to pull in the top elevation, the core elevation, so what the levels are within our floor, so we can understand where our floor actually sits within our projects. It might sometimes be offset from a level. We get much better information within our schedules regarding that. IFC links. So IFC is another big aspect of the way that BIM works, and it's again something that government have been pushing. So for the CAD users that are listening, you'll be all aware that DXF is like the universal CAD file format. We can export a DXF from AutoCAD, and we can open it up in pretty much any other package, from SketchUp to MicroStation to Photoshop. Yeah, so that level of information can then go between different platforms. IFC is like the equivalent BIM file transfer. So basically, we can take our designs and we can send them to someone that's not using a Revit-based product. So if we're structural engineers using Tekla, StruCAD, they can actually have our architect's model in IFC. It keeps the coordination between the disciplines correct. So we can send them a coordinated 3D model. So very important is IFC. It's still being developed, so it's getting better and better all the time. One of the things we can now do in Revit 2016 is we can, all the walls that come in from an IFC, understand that they are room defining. We can start to create rooms within these walls. Energy analysis. So it's something that Autodesk have been sort of developing for a few years. A few years ago, they had a product called Ecotech. Ecotech's pretty much gone now, and they've basically started to add a lot of the functionality into Revit. So we can actually now look at our model from an analytical point of view. Before, we'd have to no choice but to export it as a COBie XML. We don't need to now. We've actually got the energy analysis tools in there to be able to export that. If you're using an external consultant, though, there's no reason why you can't still export it to COBie XML. They can then use that model in HeverComb, IAS virtual environment, so we can start to do the energy analysis. There are some energy analysis tools built into Revit, and we can do quite a lot of rapid analysis to start to understand how our building is going to perform. We can then also understand when we make changes to our building, what them changes and what effects them changes are actually going to make to our building as well. So we do have certain level of energy analysis already built in. It's not going to give you Part L compliancy, but it's going to give you a good understanding of how your building's working. We've also got something called A360 Collaboration for Revit. Now, this is brand spanking new, and I know there's a lot of people that are quite interested in this. That we still have a small issue with the way that this works within the UK, and that's for legal reasons. The servers that the data is actually stored on here is actually in the States. So we're just waiting for these legalities to be sorted out. So if you imagine A360 Collaboration for Revit, it gives us this toolbar that's on the left-hand side of the on the right-hand side of the interface, and this allows us to actually collaborate live, both with other people using Revit at the same time, but also with anyone that's not using Revit. It's almost like Microsoft Messenger, so what was MSN Messenger, built into Revit, so we can collaborate live on projects. And they can start to see what we're up to. We can issue updates, etc. through there as well. So as I mentioned before, BIM very much allows us to enhance our communication. Okay, so there's sort of the main new features that are actually in 2016. So let's have a look at how Revit works. So for the people that have never seen it before, we'll talk through what the differences are, and we'll also have a look at sort of some of the processes that we can do within Revit for producing drawings, and also some of the new features as well. So I've got a small building open at the moment, and the biggest sort of feature about the way that Revit and BIM software in general works is if I select this door, the software understands that what I've actually selected is a door. Within CAD, that would be just lines, arcs and circles. It's our understanding of what we're looking at that is actually going to tell us what this software actually is, okay, what that object actually is. But in BIM, we know that's a door. Because we know that's a door, and the software understands it's a door, it can count the doors, okay? Every element that we have within the software has got two levels of properties. So we have something called its instance parameters, so they're parameters that are unique to this door. In my properties panel over here, you can actually see that this is door number 5, and that is unique to that door. If I click on this door over here, that's now door number 6. Okay. If I was to select this door, go into edit type, this is now the type properties for that door, or for that type of door. Basically, if I was to change any value in here, it wouldn't just change the door here, it would change the door anywhere where I've used that door. Okay. So if I just match properties between that door and that door, so these are now the same door. If I was to change one of the type properties in here, and we change its width to 1200, if I just move that to the side, so hopefully we can just, if I just apply that, that door's now shrunk, but more importantly, so is this one. So I haven't just affected the door I had selected, I've affected all types of that door within the project. If I just do an undo, you can see they've now opened up. So you have got to be a little bit careful when you're actually changing values within edit type, that you actually are changing the ones that you do want to update all instances of that. Although what I'm looking at here is what appears to be a 2D view, it's actually just a 2D representation of our entire 3D model. Okay, so over here I actually have a high-level window. Yeah, so if you imagine that the view I'm looking at is being cut at 1200 mil above the finished floor level of this level. So this is the ground floor. You can see over here in my project browser, any view I create is going to appear here. So within my project browser, ground floor, I know that this window is there because I put that in, and it's currently set at 2025 sill height, and that's the reason why I can't see it, because I've actually cut the building below that. So what you're seeing is like a slice through my building at that 1200. I can still move it, yeah, so I can still grab hold of it and I can manipulate this window. I could put in there what we call a region, yeah, so a plan region. If I put a plan region in there, it would allow me to see that in this view as well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that window to here. And Revit's gone, are you sure about this? Because there's a wall in the way. So it's been very intelligent and looking at the clashes and understanding that that might not be what I want to do. In Revit, we get two types of warnings. We get soft warnings and we get hard warnings. So this is what we refer to as a soft warning. A soft warning we can ignore. A hard warning will not let me continue until I fix the problem. So I can do that and I can ignore that as an issue. The nice thing though is if I go to my Manage tab at the top, I might have ignored it, but Revit will actually remember that that warning's there. And if you notice as I click on the objects, it's actually highlighting in the viewport them problems. If I was on a view where I couldn't see that and I wanted to go rectify it, I can click the Show button and it will zoom in to that area and take me exactly to where that issue needs to be resolved. So it'll never forget the errors, but it's good for us. So basically, I've updated my floor plan. Now, in a 2D environment, if I was using CAD, I now need to be aware of all other drawings that I've now impacted. So first thing I'd need to change is, let's go to the elevation. So I need to change the elevation if I was using 2D. So here's my east elevation. That window has already moved. This is that window in the east elevation. It's the same window. All I've done is I've modified the 3D model. If you imagine the way I'm working, every change I make, I'm actually making to a 3D model. It doesn't matter that I'm in a 2D view, I'm affecting the 3D model. Therefore, every view that can see that change is going to represent that change. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to modify this using my Align tool, and I'm going to align this window back to there. Okay. So my windows are now back in alignment. The problem I've got now is you notice that the hatch pattern on this wall, this is actually representing my Kingspan wall panel, which is a 1 meter by 225 high panel. It's not quite where I want it. This panel is is actually a hatch pattern, but it's a model hatch. And if I actually dimension it, you can see it's actually a meter wide. Yeah. Because it's a model hatch, it does then allow me to have it as a scalable item. I can actually also align the hatch pattern to the windows. I can then also align the window to the hatch pattern, yeah, so that we can actually start to place our windows in there perfectly in our panel widths. Okay. If I zoom out here, we can actually see I've got some finished floor levels set up. Now, these are a fundamental aspect of the way that Revit works. Whenever we draw an object, it will be associated to a level. If I'm on the ground floor and I draw a window, the window will be set to the ground floor, associated to that ground floor with a sill offset. We can change that if we want to, but by default it will always associate to the level that you're on at the time. I've named the levels, so this level is just called ground floor. It's not called level 1, level 2, level 3. The advantage there again is if I go to draw a wall, rather than drawing my wall, external walls, to be 10 meters high, I simply draw the wall from the ground floor to the roof. This gives me a much better understanding in my head about how it works. The other advantage I've got as well is that wall will always go to the roof regardless of where the roof level is. So if I wanted to now change the value in here, so I want to change this to, say, 9 meters. I can set that to 9 meters. Notice I've typed 9m. Revit doesn't always need you to type it in millimeters. I could type 9m. I could have typed 900 centimeters. Yeah, so it's very powerful. Let's just have that at 9 meters. We can set that to there. What you can also do as well is another feature that I quite like is I could set that to 27 foot 8 inch, and what Revit will do is it will convert that back. Just needs to delete some, replace some panels, so it's just changed the shape of these panels at the top. But I can actually specify an imperial measurement and it will convert that back. So if you're doing some renovation and retrofit and the only drawings you've been able to find are the imperial drawings, they're that old of the drawings, it's not really an issue. We can actually come into here in Revit when we can draw anything. We can even type lengths in as we're drawing in feet and inches and it will convert it back to millimeters for us. So that's now my being able to work in my elevation. I could move this window, I could delete the window here. If I make any changes in here as well, obviously it's going to update floor plans as well. But other information that we can get out of our 3D model, because it is 3D, it's very quick to start producing other views. So if I go to my View tab at the top and I choose Section, I want to put a section view through here, put my section in. I can then, to draw the section, just simply double click on the nose. Anything that's blue in Revit is a hyperlink. Yeah, it's created this section over here as well. So if I go down to my sections, there's section 2. I know it's section 2. If I double click on it, look, it highlights it. So here we now have that section, and it's just basically put a slice through our 3D model. Now, currently this is being displayed at what we call a coarse level of detail. Now, probably one of my other favorite features, or one of the other massive benefits in the way that Revit works, is when it comes to things like our annotation. So you'll notice down here at the bottom, I've actually got this view set to a 1 to 100. So all annotation we put in at paper space size. So the text and everything that's in here will be a particular size, okay? And we can come in and we can start to look at the text and what level and information we've got in here. If I put text in, let's go to my Annotate tab, and I draw some text, yeah? So we'll put some text in here. Hello world. That is 2 millimeter high text, yeah? It's 2 millimeters high plotted, regardless of what this says. So if I change this to a 1 to 50, yeah, notice everything appears to have got smaller. In fact, the drawing's got bigger. Yeah, if I go to a 1 to 200, everything gets bigger because the drawing's got smaller. Okay, so I can very easily just put text in, and I don't need to worry about then having to scale that text when I put my drawings onto a drawing sheet later on. So really, really sort of powerful features that we've got in there. Okay. The other thing that we've got in here is we've got 3 view detail settings. So in here at the moment, this is at a coarse. I've got the choice of choosing medium. I've also got the choice of choosing a fine. So if we have a look at the door here, we can see that the walls are just a black construction. If I come in and choose that to medium, we start to see a little bit more information. We're getting the ironmongery appearing on my door. We're getting the makeup of the floor. If I come in again and change that to a fine level of detail, we've now got the architrave around there as well. Okay, so the whole development of our drawing, we can dictate if it's a planning drawing or if we're moving it forward into our sort of like more constructional detailed drawings as well. So we can change that view setting quite easily. Another thing we can do as well is at the moment this section line has gone straight through my lift shaft. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tile my windows. And I'm just going to close that one down. So here's the two views we've got. Here's the section that's been created. And here is the, if I had to do ZA for zoom all. You notice there's no command line in Revit, but Revit has got a whole host of 2-character shortcuts, which can be all customized. If anyone hasn't found it yet, if you go to the options box under the start menu or the application button, go to your user interface, you've got keyboard shortcuts in here, and we can come in and we can start to customize our keyboard shortcuts. If you ever hover over a tool like wall, you'll see in brackets there on the help it says WA. Go over door, DR, window, WN. Yeah. Got component, CM. So these are all the shortcuts that are actually set up. So in my views now, I've got the section line that's actually here. If you notice when I select the section line, it's highlighting the box in the other window as well, so I know it's the same one. I've got a few other tools I can use in here. So for instance, I've got the ability to split segment, which means that if I didn't want this to go through the lift shaft, I can now make it go around there. If you watch the window on the left, as soon as I click, it's now updated that. So the section is true all the time to the section line. Even if I wanted to simply pull that back into the demo room and let go, this is live. Yeah. So this is a prime example of any change you make in whichever view will update the corresponding views as well. Even to the point where if I actually delete this door, yeah, so we can see it's highlighted there. I can delete it in this plan view. It's deleted it in the elevation in this section. I could also do the same thing over here. I can select it and you'll notice it's highlighting that door again. It's gone blue. So again, very easy to understand how a change anywhere is a change everywhere. The only other thing just to show you as well is everything that we're doing at the moment is we're doing in what we call, it's like a viewport. So it's like an AutoCAD viewport. So as I'm working away, what you see is what you're going to get. Yeah. The only difference is I've turned off what we call our line weights. So there's a shortcut called TL, which is thin lines. If I just turn TL back on, and we start to look in here, you'll notice that my line work's getting thicker, and as I zoom in, it's even thicker again. This is because this is showing me the line work as associated to a 1 to 50. Yeah. All our line work can be configured. If I just go to my additional settings and my line weights, we've got our pen numbers, just like you'd have in other CAD packages, and then the width of that pen. We can then control under what we call object styles, which we can also get to here on our Manage tab. If I then go to walls, we have here our pen settings for when it's in projection, i.e. when you're looking at it in it whole, or when it's cut. Currently this is classed as being cut because we've got a slice through it. So we can dictate and control how this appears. We can also change the color of it if you like as well. I'd highly recommend you be very careful when you're changing the color of items, because Revit doesn't use COBie files. So if you set all your doors to be green, they will print green unless you print it black and white or grayscale. As soon as you add any color to it, that color is the color that you see. This is exactly what you see is what you get. Okay. So other information that we can very quickly pull out of our model. I mentioned about setting up rooms. If I just come to my second floor, yeah, I just want to delete these couple of rooms that are in there. It'll just telling me that them have not been removed. So yeah, so we've actually got some rooms in here. Yeah, I'm just going to delete them and I'm going to put them back in. One of the things we can do in Revit is it's actually possible to create a room schedule before you draw anything. So you can predefine the types and numbers of rooms that you actually want in your project. So I can come into here, into Architecture. I can choose my room tool, yeah, and it's going to create a new room. If I go on the drop down here, you can actually see the rooms that are available to be placed. and all the other rooms that are redundant at the moment that have already been created or created and then deleted. So I can come in here and we can start to place our rooms. If I'm outside the building, it doesn't know where the boundary is. As soon as I move in, it's detecting the boundary of the room. And it does that because by default, a wall is classed as a room bounding element. Okay, so the bounding elements for rooms are floors, walls, ceilings, and roofs. We can get them to bound the room. Obviously, if we're only looking at the area of a room, this is the way we get the area, but we can also start to calculate the volume of a room as well. So what I can do is I can come into here. As you can see, I've got a tag in here, which is giving me two values. It's giving me the square meterage, and just so I can keep the estate agent happy, I've also got the square footage as well. So let's just finish by putting the other rooms in. So the male WC. If I hover over here, you'll notice that it's actually ignored this wall just here. And the reason being is I've told that wall not to be room bounding to allow me to calculate the area of the WC complete with the entrance vestibule as well. So I can come into here. Let's choose the disabled toilet. We can place that in there. Oops, not big enough. Look, it's not 3 square meters. It's not wide enough actually as well, but that's a completely another job for another day. But we can now place in here our different rooms. So, oops, that's not the workshop. So let's just go back. Let's put the other bits in. Circulation. Let's select the room, delete that. Select the room, delete it. Now we can put them back in. Let's go back to room. That's the kitchen. That's the circulation. That's the workshop. And that's the atrium. Okay, so we can place in our rooms. If I hit escape, we can easily select the rooms. If we actually select the room, look, we've got the ability to add additional information about this room. So its name, its occupancy, what department, what its base finish is, ceiling finish, wall finish. All this information is very easily schedulable, but we've got the ability to add that information in there. We don't need to show it graphically, but we can add the information in. I might want a colour fill in here, like I've had on the ground floor. Go to annotate, choose my colour fill legend. Yep, and I can then place it. It says, right, what type of legend do you want? I want a colour legend based on the rooms, and I want it based on the room name. Okay, and then it will place that in there. Okay, I can adjust how that works so that it fits nicely. We can start to drag it up and change how that is. If you don't like the colours that it's chosen, for instance, it's chosen this pattern here. I've probably modified this already. If I go to edit scheme, we can start to change this. Now, what is nice is the fact that you don't have to have solid colours. You can have hatch patterns as well. Yeah, so we can have them back as solid. Yeah, you can actually just keep typing in rather than having to go down the list. Hit apply. Yeah, that's now changed that, and the male WC is now grey. That is consistent as well. So if I go to one of my other levels, yeah, in here, this is set up slightly different. If you notice in here, I've got a by area. If I change that from by area to, yeah, back to room name, okay, we've got the grey colour again. So it keeps us consistent across the colours as well. So when we put our views onto the same sheet, we don't really need multiple legends. We can just get away with sticking a single legend on, if you like. Okay. So we've now got some rooms in here. We can understand the areas. I might want to start putting my room data sheets together. So before we actually do some scheduling of the information in here, what I might want to do is put in some elevations. So I want to create my room elevations. Click on view, go to my elevations, and I can choose my elevation tool. I've got a 12mm circle or a 10mm circle. That's the size of the annotation plotted again. This will automatically detect my area, which is quite nice. It's always pointing to a wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this. This is elevation 1A. And if I select this, I can now turn on the remaining elevations in here, so B, C, and D. Now, the most time-consuming feature of creating your room elevations is once you've set this up, is to actually come to your elevations and start to renaming them. Yeah. So this is the hardest part of creating room elevations. So I need to come in, rename, and that's going to be TR1 North. Rename TR1 East. TR1 South. And finally TR1 West. And that's the hardest part. If I now come into these, here are my room elevations already drawn. Yeah, very, very powerful, very, very quick. And of course, these are all live views. So if for whatever reason elements are updated or deleted, that change will be represented. If I just do an undo, there's the window back. Yeah. So set up to 1 to 50 this view so you can actually see where that elevation marker is. So we've now started to create all our drawing elements, but let's start to pull some other information out of this model. So I'm going to come into schedule, come into here, and I can look at my schedule of quantities, and I'm going to do a room schedule. Now I'm going to take this a little bit further with some of the features that are actually in schedules that some people maybe aren't fully aware of. So I'm actually interested in its room number, its room name. I'm interested in its area, and I might even be interested in its volume. Okay, I could put its other information in, like the level that it's on as well. So here we now have a room schedule. We've got the level that that room's on, we've got its volume, and we've got its area. Just to be aware, by default, Revit doesn't calculate the volume. That's to actually speed up the processing time as you actually go through. If I actually go to architecture and over here to where it says room and area, if I come up with a drop down and go to my area and volume computations, by default that's ticked. So you might find that when you do a schedule with volume it says not computed. That's because you need to come into here and turn on the areas and volumes. So click OK, and this is now the way that I'd like it set up. The problem I've got is I've got these additional rooms which I've used and deleted. If I just put select that, I can actually delete. Yeah, and we can then start to delete these rows. Yep, so now I've got no non-placed rooms. They're all actually placed. If I go to my sorting and grouping, I might want to add some grand totals in here. And then underneath my area, I want to calculate the total for my area. Okay. So the total area of my building that I've got with all my rooms is 740.52 square meters. Okay. Now what I want to do is, it may be that I've been given a spec and I've got certain requirements that I've got to go for. So imagine you were designing it, you've been asked to design a school. You might know that that school needs 12, 24, whatever classrooms. Each classroom needs to hold 30 students and 2 teachers, 2 teaching staff. Then we can work out exactly how big the minimum requirement is for the area for that space. Okay. So what I can do is, within our schedules, we don't need to just go on the fields that we've been given. Okay, we can add additional information anyway through what we call project parameters and shared parameters. We can create as much information as we want there, but we can also start to add parameters in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a parameter into my project called required area. Yeah, tell it that it's actually an area that I'm interested in, and we can put this under the dimensions. Now this is just depends where it's stored. So within our rooms, it'll store the data under a heading called dimensions. So we can click OK. It's already got one in because I've already done this before. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to delete. I'm just going to add that value in. Yeah. So I've actually already created this previously in this project. So I've got a field called required area. Okay. And as you can see, is I've already actually started to fill this in. Yeah, so I'm actually slightly ahead of myself. So what I'm saying is that all these areas have got a required area. So the volume, the area here, in fact, let's just make this a little bit easier by moving that required area up. So it's next to area. Okay. So this training room one's 30. I actually need it to be 35. Training room 2 doesn't need to be as big as what it is. And I can come down and I can actually start to say for each of these instances, I can come in and say that needs to be 20. That needs to be 80. Okay. So we can now start to put in the requirements for what we've got. What I can also then do is I can start to create what we call a calculated field. Okay. So if I just go to fields, yeah, I can actually come into here and I can create a calculated value in here. Yeah. And we can actually have a calculated value which is going to be the area diff. Yeah. Which is an area. And I can add a formula in here. So I can click additional fields in here. So these are the fields that are already in here. So I can actually say, right, so I actually want to take the area and I want to subtract from that the required area. Okay. Again, let's just move that field up. So now what we're saying is that the required area is 35. I've only got 30. What's my difference? Yeah. So I'm off by minus 434 of a meter. Now that's all good, but I've got to go down there and start looking for these issues. So what I can actually do is just to make this a little bit easier. If I go to formatting, we've got the ability to add a conditional format to a field. So where my area difference is, I want to add a conditional format where area difference is less than 0. If it's 0, that's fine. So it doesn't want to be less than or equal to. Then just highlight this in a color. Yeah, so I can then come in. Let's just set in our color. So we'll use orange. And now I can see where my problems are within this drawing. So we can start to add a lot of additional information and calculated information within here as well. Remember, this is all live. Yep. So for instance, the disabled toilet, if I just actually put in there that needs to be 3 as a requirement, look, it's telling me where I'm out. So I'm just going to put that in on all the disabled toilets. So I should have 3 of them. Yeah. So it's now telling me that that's out. If I now come back to my model and I start to adjust this value, so I can pull that out. Now that should be okay, and we can do the same on each level. Yeah, we can even see where I moved it to on the level below, and it's actually snapping to the information on the level below. Yeah, notice I haven't got that here. It's because I haven't got my underlay set, so we can turn the underlay on to be the first floor. Yeah, and then now it's a bit hard to see, but we can actually just see where the door is on the level below there. Look, it's a bit hard to see on my screen. I can pull that in and it'll snap there. Okay, so 3.07. Hopefully now if I go back to my room schedule, these are now not highlighting as a problem. So again, it's a really good way of highlighting issues, and then we can go back and rectify them. We don't need to rerun a refresh or anything like that. This information will be updated afterwards. Okay, so I want to create some drawing sheets now. I'm going to create a new sheet, and in here we can come in. Here's my A1 metric sheet, so I can either load in or we can start using this drawing sheet. And then what I can do is I can start to create views on here. So I might want to do my room elevations for TR1. Okay, so we can now start to pull in these elevations. Okay. Yeah, and we can place them in. It's put these lines a little bit further down. That's because of it's showing this section. I might not want that section line to show. Just like you can do in AutoCAD, I can double click inside this view. I'm going to right click and I'm going to hide that information. Double click out of the viewpoint. Double click in here. I can hide that view. Double click out. I can then maneuver that up and it will automatically snap it in place. For those of you that haven't seen it yet, if you've got your subscription with us, you will automatically get the Greatech Power Pack within here. There's various tools within the Greatech Power Pack for helping us to arrange drawings on a sheet. So if I actually just select all them, got my Power Pack, I've got some arrange tools, and I can arrange these now horizontally by center lines, yeah, and choose the master view, and it will actually align all them up as well. So again, you don't need to start snapping them. We can use the tools on the Greatech Power Pack. If you're not aware of this, do get in touch with us, and we can make sure that you actually get access to this Power Pack. Okay. So someone's just asked a question. Let's just have a look. Someone's lost a sound. Has everyone lost a sound? Can I have a show of hands, just so we can see who's? Can everyone hear? So if you could give me a show of hands, yes. So it might just be just one person. If you just want to sort of try and rejoin the presentation, you should then pick the sound up. Okay, cool. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so very easy to start to create sheets, and it is just a case of dragging and dropping our views. Remember, I mentioned these are viewports. We can set our sheets up. We can then start to create as many room schedules as we want. So we could create a room schedule and filter it by room name, so it's only giving me the room data for training room 1. Okay, so even if I went back to my schedule that I created here, we can then filter this where room name equals, and it will give me the options, just training room 1, click OK, and again go back to my new drawing sheet that I've just created, and we can also then place on here the schedule which is specific just for this room. Okay, so we can very quickly move that in. Now, one of the things that I've avoided doing is I haven't really shown you anything that's three-dimensional, which might seem a little bit strange, but if we go to the top here, we've got a house, our default 3D view, okay? And here is the office block in its entirety. This is what's being generated as we're drawing. So as we work along, this is actually what's we're developing. So all our views are representative of this. And just as we could do before, we can select items in here and delete it. Now, there's two types of 3D views in Revit. We've got the axonometric view, which is what you're looking at the moment, but we also have perspective views as well. So at any point, I can go to a view, I can go to my 3D view, and I can choose a camera. Yeah, so we can start to place camera shots in here. Yeah, I could start to then use my steering wheel to make sure that what I've actually got there is what I want to see. And then we've got various different view styles that we can set up in here as well. So I could change that into shaded, so we get a shaded view. I can have consistent colors, so it doesn't try and make it look too 3D. If I go back to my hidden line and go back into the top here, we've got graphic display options. I've got all sorts of other features that I can now start to add in here. So we can start to cast shadows. Yeah, so I can have my shadows in there, depending on whether I want this to be architectural shadows or the exact shadows for the way that the building is going to work. We can have what's called ambient shadows in there as well. So you notice it's adding a little bit of 3D depth into the internals of a building. Got some sort of dark smudge shadows in here. I also, a feature that was added in a couple of years ago now was the sketchy lines. So if I actually want to make this look like it's been hand drawn, I can start to add jitter, line extensions in, and we start to get that effect as well. So again, this is all different ways that we can now look at presenting our drawings, how we can actually then portray our ideas to our clients. Okay. We can change the background, so let's have a gradient background as well, so a bit of colour in there as well. So there's lots of things that we can pull in to start to enhance our views. We can even add backgrounds in there, background image, so it might be the fact that you've got an image of a site that you want to use as well. Okay. You can also save all the settings once you've set these up, so you can apply it to multiple different views. If I wanted to have a section view, so one of the new features, if you like, that we added in, if I go to my staircase, I'm just going to select the staircase look. We've got the ability now to come into here and create a section box, and that will automatically change my 3D view, the default one, into this section box, which you can still edit a little bit, so maybe you want it to have a bit more of a staircase. Okay, so that's created a section box around the staircase. It's very quick for producing 3D information that you can then use on your drawing sheets to help represent, and to just add an extra addition to the 2D information that we have in there as well. So there's some very, very powerful tools in there for actually generating that. One of the other sort of tools that were added in this year was the fact that if I go to my right click on here, it'll go to open sheet. It's not actually listing anything at the moment because this drawing isn't on a sheet. If I go to one of the elevation views that I added before onto one of the sheets, so here's the TR1, right click, I can now open the sheet and it will take me to the drawing sheet with that views on. They're just ways to which we can navigate quicker. A lot of the functionality that was added into Revit 2016 were tools to give us better productivity, make the software work quicker. Okay. Once we have got our view set up, so let's just go create another view. So just on the first floor here, let's add another camera. One of the other features that we had added in was the other render engine. So now when I come into here and I go to my teapot, for the first time we've now got the ability to change the render that we're using. So I'm going to use the Autodesk Ray Trace, and then I can hit render in this view. I haven't set any lighting up, so this might be a little bit dark to start with. It'll load all my materials and the geometry onto my graphics card. So this is hardware-based rendering, and then hopefully in a couple of seconds it will actually start to render. The level that you can get out is quite good. If I just go into here and choose, this was an image that was rendered using the ray trace, so we get quite a nice effect out of it, and that was just a case of point and click. The materials are already set up in there and we can get that straight out. Okay, so I think that's just taking a little bit of time because it's probably calculating all the extra lights in there as well. And I might have just crashed my machine. It's probably while I'm running the webinar software as well. All our views though we can take out then to other packages. So one of the advantages I've got is I could create what we call an FBX file out of this and send it off to someone that's using 3ds Max to add the extra level of detailing that you get in Max. I could also use what we call the suite workflows. So if you've got the building design suite on here on your machine, you can actually set the information directly out to the other visualization packages again and render then on your own machine. To give you an example of that view taken to 3ds Max, so that's the exact view that we're just looking at. If I just launch this, that is the same view. Yeah, so that particular model exported out to 3ds Max. Now, because the geometry has already been created in 3D, when it then comes to creating this level of detail, I probably spent about 2 hours additional work within 3ds Max to actually start to look at the photorealistic. One of the byproducts of BIM is the 3D visual side, because it's almost the 3D is just happening in the background, and a lot of people that have worked within Revit, within CAD software before, do actually struggle to comprehend that they are actually working in 3D. They've tried using AutoCAD in 3D and they have struggled there. The fact that this is a sort of like a direct freebie, if you like, within the process is just a bonus. It also means that if you do have a need for visualization, if you are exporting this to an external visualization house, they can actually take benefit of the fact that you've already got the 3D model drawn up. Okay. So unfortunately that has actually crashed, which luckily was just at the end of the bit of a presentation that I actually wanted to show. Basically, I hope you've enjoyed sort of the introduction of the way that Revit works and can see the benefit of generating that 3D information. The fact that we can then integrate that with the other disciplines, with with structures and with the M&E guys, really does make the Revit suite of products very, very valuable. The fact that the other tools are available within the same file format. As I mentioned before, there's a Revit structures presentation this afternoon if you want to see how the integration works between the two products and how we can round trip. I'll be showing that then. So thank you very much for your time. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to ask them. What I'm going to do is I'm probably going to finish the presentation now, but I will get back to anyone later on if they've got any questions. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope it's been useful. Thank you very much.